evaluated in about a week. But the news sounds grim because unfortunately for Ville Heinola, like this was his chance, but the other thing I would add is that there was some swelling, which is what they were saying. It didn't just happen, but he said there was some swelling, and then when they did, the blood work came back on Wednesday, it turned out that there was an infection. So again, how they treat the infection, I'm not going to speculate. Yeah. There's no real value there, but again, what we do know is that unfortunately he's not going to be skating with the team for the next little while, and that they're going to reevaluate him in about a week. So we'll hear from Scott Arniel and his comments with respect to Ville and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I'll play those coming up here momentarily. But you just have to hope that it's the best case scenario. And to your point, it's not worth speculating wildly. That's why the doctors are going to do what they are. It's just the timing of it is so bizarre. It is what stands out to me about the entire circumstance. In that, he suffers the injury, roughly a year ago. He's plays for the Moose last year. He's fine, by and large. You watched him, Dave, play with the Moose, and there were no lingering issues. And then all of a sudden, they do the medical, this week, and they find that there's something that has flared up just out of nowhere, randomly at this point in time. That to me is what's just so. I mean, I'm not going to. I'll use the word tragic for lack of better word, but from Ville Heinola's perspective, yeah, unfortunate. That's probably a better word as well. When we keep things in relative perspective. Yeah, exactly right. But just so bizarre that this is just all of a sudden flares up almost a year or so to when the original issue happened.
Absolutely. The timing is a little bit spooky. I think that's maybe the word you're looking for, right? It's a little bit eerie, the timing of this injury, right? And this will mean that for the time being, who you thought was a lock to get that third pairing left side role, it's a little bit unclear right now. Could Ville Heinola still be healthy and ready to go for the October 9th season opener? In theory, we just don't know, right? And that's the unknown, right? That's the scary part. Like, is this going to be a week? Is it going to be 2 weeks? Is it going to be a month? We have no idea. We're going to have to wait to find out more information from the Jets here. But yeah, for a guy who, by all accounts, made the team out of training camp last year, Dave, this year you just assumed that he was going to make the team because obviously Brendan Dillon is no longer there and there's an opening on the left side, right? With Dylan Samberg going up and most likely playing on the second pair this year with Neil Pionk, right? So just horrible news. And exactly, Drew, we're just going to have to, have our fingers crossed that, Ville's not going to be out for too long.
I'm just happy about the fact that I just realized Drew just hit live go live on
2 minutes ago. I forgot, I forgot to hit the go live button. And as I was sitting here doing the intro, I'm like, I think I forgot to do something. And I realized that what I forgot to do was hit go live. So for everybody who's watching, everyone who's live here at FanFest, they got 5 bonus minutes of absolute gold broadcasting. But for our audience that's watching at home, they missed out on that absolute gold. So they'll have to probably, I don't even know where, it's going to be lost. It's gone.
It was such a magical 5 minutes of content.
Well, the beauty of it was just Drew and Ezzy. So really, I'm actually happy about it because that's the reason why I wait till the end and I come in at the end, folks. So thankfully, you'll only hear Dave M and not these two guys.
That's true. It's gone to the illegal curve ether for years now that they won't hear the beauty conversation Ezzy and I had about.
So you have to do your intro again then.
That's okay. Nobody needs. They've heard it enough, but they didn't get to hear us talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles bouncy castle and the Jets dogs. Let's go to what Scott Arniel said yesterday when he broke the news about Ville Heinola.
Ville not so good. Got some bad news on him. He's got his ankle. He's got an infection. So this isn't day to day. So we're gonna we'll come back around this in maybe a week or so. Maybe see where he's at. But a little bit more serious than what we thought.
Yeah, with Ville.
There you go, Jets head coach Scott Arniel talking about a little more serious than they thought. I mean, just out of nowhere. I mean, that's really what it boils down to is just and the. I think this is a significant loss for the Winnipeg Jets on the back end. You remember the Jets last year? They really had no injuries on the back end.
Yeah.
It was up front where they had their injuries, and we know where the depth of the team is, and that's up front. On the back end, you had a number of question marks, even with a healthy Ville Heinola, for the majority of the season or the start of the season. It was him versus Logan Stanley, as they try to battle. That was largely the training camp battle over who's going to win that job. Now that changes everything. Stanley is probably the front runner because there isn't somebody else who's a natural left side defenseman, on this roster. You got Dylan Coghlan and Hayden Fleury, and those guys are depth guys, and they're battling almost with more, with Colin Miller and everything else. But
Hayden Fleury can play the left side.
Right.
Coughlin's a right shot, and we assume that he can't. Look, at the end of the day, there's options here. I mean, you could always have a guy who's more of a right shot guy play the left side.
It's never
But it
ideal.
seems like Logan Stanley is going to be, at least, again, we're talking about hypotheticals here.
Yeah.
Ville Heinola could be ready to go for the first game of the regular season. We don't know. But you would just think, based on seniority, that it would be Logan Stanley.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to assume that it's Logan Stanley's role now moving forward. And again, the depth issues for the Winnipeg Jets on the back end were going to be a talking point, I think, for the majority of this season, Dave. And now they're already rearing their head, and really training camp is a day old, is a day in. And this is already the conversation that we're having. I'll be honest, I did not expect anything was going to bump us up off of the absence of Cole Perfetti to start training camp. But then that news came out yesterday, and all of a sudden it's the back end that has the area of concern.
No, there's no question about it. And look, this is what training camp's all about. It's all about opportunity. And so we're going to see another player, Hayden Fleury most likely, get that opportunity and to step up and assume a role on this Jets team. And so you've got a whole length of time now in terms of, like, training camp just barely started, right? So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think it's unfortunate, but again, it'll create an opportunity for someone else. But again, you feel bad for Ville Heinola based on how things went last year, how hard it was, how hard he worked to get back. He worked so hard last summer to be ready for training camp.
Right.
Was ready for training camp, breaks the ankle, has the surgery, has to get back into shape, gets it back in shape, doesn't get into any games because, to your point, Drew, everybody was healthy, and then all of a sudden you go from that lack of opportunity, okay, fine, well, now I know what I need to do. And again, we talked to him. We knew you were going to get a determined Ville Heinola over the summer, and then to have this kind of flare up. But look, it is what it is, and you'll have to deal with it. And Scott Arniel talked about it later in the interview. It's just another kind of bump in the road, and it's just something that you're going to have to overcome. So we'll see if he's able to overcome it and get back into shape, and be able to challenge for that next role.
Yeah, I mean, that's really where the Winnipeg Jets are at, is they're going to have to just sort of pivot as best they can with this situation, which of course is not an ideal one for them to have to deal with this kind of adversity early on in the start of training camp. I mean, when training camp begins, it's mostly good news stories. It's usually positive thinking. It's bright outlooks for the next year. And so far for the Winnipeg Jets, you have these two clouds that are now lingering over the team. The other cloud, of course, being Cole Perfetti, where we're now sitting here and it's September 21st and it's 9:15 in the morning, and Cole Perfetti, a guy who represented the Winnipeg Jets at the player interviews at the NHLPA Player Days in Vegas, is nowhere to be found, and you can't help but wonder when
he's actually in the bouncy castle right now.
Oh, is that where he is? Okay, he's in the bouncy castle there. But again, with regard to that, another sort of, I'm going to use the word negative, because I do believe that the Ville Heinola one is certainly unfortunate. There's no question about it. But the Cole Perfetti one is certainly beginning to be more and more concerning as the days go on, and there's no sign of him, has he?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks. I think we all expected Cole Perfetti to be signed by now, but he's not. And there is a precedent there are several actually players in Winnipeg that have held out, right? We've talked about it. Kyle Connor, Josh Morrissey, Jacob Trouba. I might be missing someone in there. We've been doing the show for 16 years now, but yeah. I mean, so there have been players in the past that haven't started training camp with a contract.
Kyle Connor, Patrick Laine.
I'm not sure if I mentioned Connor, but yeah. So I mean, there have been other players, right, Dave? But I think, it didn't seem like this one was going to be as complicated, but when you listen to Chevy's comments and Murat asking him about some of the comparables, like I brought Shane Pinto up as well. That was a couple weeks ago now.
Sure.
Look, if he's getting a bridge deal, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $3.5 to $4 million,
well,
right?
That's my point, is that, if it's a short-term contract, and it sounds by all reports that it's likely to be a short-term contract, the comparables have already now been signed. Even Dawson Mercer out of New Jersey yesterday gets signed. The comparables, the frameworks I think should have already been established. That why is it still lingering here?
Well, it's a question of coming together. I mean, if you're asking for X and I'm offering you Y, and
Right.
we're not close. And again, like the gap is, it doesn't sound like the gap is, look guys, I don't think the gap is $100,000 to $200,000. Let's put it that way. I think it's a significantly.
I think if it was 100 or 200,000, Dave,
you split
we
the
would have
difference and you're
had a
done.
contract 2 weeks ago.
That's right. So
Yeah.
my point is that I think that and look, the comparables are, like Shane Pinto is an interesting one from a stats point of view, but Shane Pinto was also older in the process, and,
Sure.
and part of the reason why Shane Pinto's in this situation is everything that went on with him.
He was
Dawson
suspended for the gambling
Yeah, and
issues.
Dawson Mercer basically got a 3-year, $4 million deal, right?
Yeah.
But he, of course, has been healthy for the last 3 years. He's played 82 games, I believe. So it's again.
He's played 82 games all 3 years.
Sorry,
actually.
that's what I'm trying to say.
that's- I understood what you're saying.
Yeah. So the point is that you've got a guy who's managed to stay healthy every year. That's Cole's sort of impediment right now. From a stat perspective, you can take comparable, but from a one-to-one, they're not apples to apples. And again, you're never going to get a perfect comparable in any of these players, but you can get relatively similar ones. But again, it becomes a function of where is the team, where is the player. And again, my understanding, my thought process here is that we're not talking a couple $100,000. If we were, that number would be resolved, as you said, Drew. You meet in the middle and you'd be dealt with it. But it's not. So again, right now you've got two sides that don't seem eye to eye, even though they were playing nice in the sandbox. So that was the key.
It doesn't take long to go from,
well, we don't even know where Cole Perfetti is.
Ezzy and I have kids, and we know that playing in the sandbox nicely, 1 second, 2 seconds later, and it's all of a sudden a fist fight in that same sandbox.
But in all seriousness,
Usually that's
guys,
between you and Ezzy.
Yeah.
We're fighting over a hot dog.
Drew and I would always be fighting over a hot dog, regardless if we're in a sandbox or not. But
it's true.
You have to think, guys, just where we're at in training camp, right? Like, you would think that there's a preseason game happening. We're in day 3 of training camp here.
Yeah. There's a
at Hockey
preseason
for
game
All
tonight.
Center. Yeah.
It's sort of like, when did that happen?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, you'd think that just based, if you're looking at kind of like, we always talk about deadline hunting, you think you would see you don't think this is going to go, you'd have to think this isn't going to go another week or week and a half late into training camp. You'd think that this is going to get done relatively soon. And I agree with you, Drew. With the Dylan Guenther contract, I think there's some similarities there. You mentioned Dawson Mercer.
Well, Guenther signed for the 8 years. He signed the big. There was no bridge deal there. That was the big money from Utah went to him yesterday.
And I realize, even though all we're hearing from the insiders is that it's going to be a bridge deal, guys. But I mean, there always is the chance that there's going to be a long-term deal, right? Like, I have no inside information about whether that's going to happen or not. But I mean, regardless, you just have to think that, they want to get Perfetti into training camp. They want to get him into some preseason games. So again, I've been wrong about this for the last 3 weeks. I thought there was going to be a contract before training camp started, but you'd have to think now that training camp is into day 3 and there's a preseason game tonight, and that the veterans are going to get more into the preseason games. I'm considering Perfetti a veteran for the sake of this. He's one of the established players.
Yes.
You'd have to think
a guy who's not fighting for a job, a guy who's fighting who wants a top 6 role.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'd have to think that this contract's going to get done, by, I don't know, the latest mid next week.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't.
But I've been wrong before, so who knows?
I don't necessarily disagree with that thought process, but we would have thought, that it was going to get done 3 weeks. When we came back from the summer hiatus, we thought this contract was going to get done, and that was 3 weeks ago. At this point in time, we thought that this contract, that a short-term deal was basically in the drawer. And if they wanted to do a longer-term deal, that's what they were working towards. And if they weren't able to get there, they would just go with the short-term. Well, it looks like we were wrong on that one, and that is in the in our 15-year history, that is the first time we've ever been wrong. But I find it to be. I think it's problematic. I just think it's problematic from the Winnipeg Jets' perspective that you start the year with this hanging over the organization. And if you're Cole Perfetti, I don't think you want to. I think you want to be on the ice getting that top 6 role, getting those reps with your potential line mates. And I'm not blaming him for this. I'm saying both sides obviously need to find a way to bridge whatever gaps exist. But I do think that it is a problematic start to the 24-25 season from the Winnipeg Jets perspective.
Yeah, but I mean, like, at the same time, it's part. Cole Perfetti said he wished it would have begun earlier. It is a good question as to why it took this long to kind of get going with the negotiations. I mean, obviously they were, quote, always having conversations. Right. But at the same time, you would have thought they would have already been further along. But again, I think that speaks to the gap in terms of what the two sides are at. again, we don't know, and we won't really get an idea until we actually hear what that final number is. My prediction is going to be around the 3.5, as I think it'll be 2 years, $3.5 million. But
that's the funniest thing, right? Like, about all these negotiations, Dave. We talk about it for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And then you find out at the contract, you're like,
why did it
2
take
years,
$3.5
million?
Why did it take so long to get to that point?
Well, again, and I think the only thing that speaks to in my mind is that there's a gap, and a sizable one. Well, and so, we've already spoken about that, at length, and I think the idea of him missing the time. Now, in Cole's defense, I will say that we've seen it with Josh Morrissey, we've seen it with Kahkonen. I mean, we haven't seen it in a while, so I think people have forgotten what it's like when a guy...
Connor was 2019, I believe.
Yeah, him and Laine were the same year, right? And were they the same year when they were renegotiating their deals? And I thought so.
I don't remember.
My
brain doesn't work that well.
I think you're right, Dave.
I think Laine and Connor were the same year at camp. And look, and remember, the difference there was that Laine and Connor were in Michigan and Finland, right? They didn't come to Winnipeg. They didn't train with their teammates. And I'm not getting...
They didn't have the, quote, nice... What was it? What did Elliott say?
Nicest contract dispute in history.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, so from that perspective, if you look at it and you think, okay, things were still... And for all intents and purposes, we're led to believe things are still amicable between the two sides. It's just a function of trying to hammer down on the details. Is Cole Perfetti in a worse position than the Winnipeg Jets? Training camp's already begun. Guys are solidifying roster spots. And so from his perspective, I mean, it's only 3 days in, but... you're working towards that. So you have to think from his point of view, listen, I want that more money, but at the same time, I also want to be able to ensure that I get that playing time. That's going to guarantee me a spot in the top 6 and a role where I can earn that contract, my next contract. So again, he has to decide how much he wants to stick to what his number is, and how much he hates the Jets number, and if they can find some sort of path in the middle.
Well, it was last week where Scotty Billick was on with us, who basically, Scotty said, that there wasn't really any negotiations occurring. Now, of course, as Elliot Friedman and the rest of the insiders like to inform us with their platitudes, it's, well, that can change with one phone call. And it's like, yes, that can change with one phone call, guys. Lots can change with one phone call. We all know that.
2 phone calls.
Hey, Cole Perfetti could also call up the airport and say, listen, I want to go back to Toronto.
Yeah, he can book a flight pretty quickly and be on his way wherever he wants to go. That can happen with one phone call as well. What I'm stuck on, and I know that the Jets are a team that usually grinds because they have the leverage. And I'm usually an advocate of using the leverage that you have. Right now, Cole Perfetti, there's no arbitration. That's not an option for him. He is really beholden. The Jets hold the hammer here. With a salary cap, though, that is going to rise dramatically around the league for the next number of years. They're talking about it, the numbers are going to go up. We're done with the COVID payback. That salary cap is going to be rising. And I'm not saying you have to give him, every dollar that he would ever want, but I can't help but wonder if this maybe isn't the opportunity to grind as hard as you would have when the salary cap was still questionable, or where the salary cap was not going up as significantly as it is.
Right, and the only thing I would interject is, again, it becomes a function of, I don't think we're grinding on $100,000 or $200,000.
Right.
That to me is what I think the important distinction to make is that if it was just a small amount of money, I would agree with you, Drew. I don't think you grind that hard, but the fact of the matter is, I think it's a fairly wide gap, and that is the reason why you're not seeing that meet in the middle. Yeah. So again, there's the pressure points that you have to watch for in any negotiation. Similar to when you were negotiating your next big contract with a legal curve.
Yeah. And
Ezzy and I grinded you down, and we grinded you down.
I'm actually paying you guys to be on the show now. That's how good negotiators you guys are.
So I think that, like I said, the pressure points will continue to mount. He's missing a game tonight. We knew that most of the established guys weren't going to be playing in the first couple of games.
Right, but you're required to address a certain number of veterans regardless.
Eight veterans.
Yeah. So he was going to, at some point in time, he was going to play a hockey game relatively soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe that's what they're doing. They don't want him under contract so he doesn't have to play in these preseason games and keep him healthy that way.
Well, possibly.
And going back to what you were saying about how, this is kind of hanging over, I don't think it affects the players at all. I'm not saying that that's what you were saying, Drew, but I think, the only thing you have to be a little bit worried about, even though by all accounts these negotiations have been going well, even if there haven't been that many negotiations, in the last couple of weeks, based on what Scott Billick has been saying, right? Mm-hmm. You just don't want this to affect the next contract and the relationship between the two players, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, guys, we're all hearing, it's all speculation and secondhand accounts and everything about what's been going on, right? So you have to just hope that, you know, there isn't going to be any bad blood. And I don't think there will be any bad blood in these negotiations, but we've seen in the past, like Andrew Kopp.
Well, that's what Kyle Connor
was
said.
a player that he didn't like what happened during arbitration, I believe it was, right? So the Perfetti contract's going to get done. I imagine it's going to get done, you know, not too long from now. It might happen this weekend. It might happen early next week. You would have to think this isn't going to linger in late into training camp, because at the end of the day, guys, they want Perfetti to get into some exhibition games, and they want him to be ready to go. It's one thing to be skating on your own and practicing, Dave. It's another thing to get a couple exhibition games under your belt before the regular season starts.
Well, I see our buddy Paulie Edmonds is joining us here at the table. We're live at Hockey for All Center, Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest. So we'll go to our first commercial break. Paulie's giving us the thumbs up. I'm going to tell Dave M to send us to break. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by PlayNow, live from Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest and on all of our social media platforms.
We want to thank you for not betting with PlayNow and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with PlayNow, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whatever your day throws at you, Kids Eat Free is back at Boston Pizza to turn it all around. With free kids meals and family fun all September long. Plus, Mario and Friends are taking over with an exclusive kids booklet and more. All free with minimum purchase all month long.
Welcome back to Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest, live at Hockey for All Center. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and our guest Paul Edmonds with you here to talk about the Winnipeg Jets for the next 90 minutes or so at this point in time. Come on down to our broadcast location. Our friends at PlayNow have a great prize package for you to enter. We're going to give that away during the course of the day. And of course, PlayNow, the official sponsor, title sponsor of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Learn to bet with PlayNow, the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Sign up and get up to $250 in bonus bets. Conditions apply, 18 plus. And of course, most importantly, enjoy responsibly. Paulie Edmonds, I got to say, I got to throw you, not under the bus, but I got to make mention. that
right out of the gate.
It was a week ago.
Yeah.
You know, you're a man of tradition. You're a man of honor. A week ago, you texted us and said, next week is FanFest. I was with you last year at FanFest. Am I getting the invite again? And I have to say, after we went 5 people down the list, you are getting that invite. I got funnier over the offseason.
Yeah, well, according to my wife, I was third on the list too. You know.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Paulie, good to see you, buddy. How are things?
Yeah, really good. You know, this is always the kickoff, right?
Yeah.
And I think we probably talked about it last year, but it begs repeating. The amount of people here at 9:15 in the morning.
Yeah. The amount of hot dogs being eaten
all
at
4 rinks are
9:15.
being utilized here at Hockey for All Center, and 2 of them, of course, for skating purposes with the Jets and training. But then I guess the wrinkle today is that there's going to be a game tonight.
Yeah, isn't that
so
bizarre?
we kind of get to see this team, again, out of the gate. Now, it's not going to be the team that they ice against Edmonton coming up in October to open up the 82-game regular season schedule. But I think the interesting part, the intriguing part now is that, and it's been repeated twice by head coach Scott Arniel, and that is the opportunity that exists for some of these younger players, guys to push in. And I know that you've talked about Cole Perfetti repetitively, and we could probably touch on it here. Without him here, there's another opportunity for somebody else, one that we never envisioned leading up to training camp, Drew.
Well, let's talk about that. That's the sort of the elephant in the arenas, is that he's not here as this contract continues to be negotiated. What's your level of, I'm going to use the word concern for lack of a better word, that training camp is underway, we're a few days in, he's not here. It was a week ago, 10 days ago, he was representing the team in Vegas. It seemed like this was going to get done, but yet training camp has began and it's not done yet.
The playing, in some of those sort of promotional aspects is great, but this is business.
Right.
So the goodwill stuff is great, but this is the hard tax of dollars and cents and contracts, both good for the player and good for the organization. My sense is that Cole Perfetti is going to stew and get more upset. I mean, an idle mind is a dangerous thing. And for the Winnipeg Jets, they're moving on. And if Cole Perfetti brings his 19 goals and his 38 points from last year back in good time, of course, he'll be welcomed here. I understand this. I mean, this is the decision that Cole Perfetti and his camp have taken. There's been a contract that's been offered. I don't know that they've bandied back and forth to try to get to some middle ground. I don't know where that is. But there's been something tabled, and that they're not signing that. So here's the impasse. At that point, you look at Braden Yager, Colby Barlow, Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov.
Sure.
The list goes on who might fill that spot. And that's exciting if you're a Jets fan. When you're not here competing for a job, when you're not around, you get forgotten about really quick. You really do, especially in jobs and in business. And that's where it is. I cautioned in my own mind about where Cole was going to take this in his camp, and he's not here for training camp. And in day one, again, head coach Scott Arniel said, we're going over some things. You're not going to be here to go over the things that we want to go over. There's always going to be a catch-up. And I remember, guys, Patrick Laine, Kyle Connor sat out at the same time, and they were a little late. And I believe it was Laine that said that he never felt comfortable for the first couple of months leading up. He just felt like he was always behind. The longer this goes, the further behind Cole Perfetti is going to find himself when it comes to getting up to speed on what they're doing here with the Jets.
Well, so let me ask you this, Paulie. It was Elliot Friedman, I think, who referred to this, and Dave knows the exact quote, that this was the nicest contract dispute going on. Is it your impression that maybe that the friendliness of it is maybe beginning to reduce?
I think the longer he stays away, the more upset maybe the player gets, because he doesn't feel like he's being looked after. And if they're not talking, that's even worse. Like now they're not talking. I'm waiting for the phone to ring and it's not ringing. That's another sort of bad situation, sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. So I think that there's going to be some angst here at some point. I don't know if it's quite reached the percolating level yet. But the longer it goes, certainly the more I think that you can understand that it's going to get more contentious.
Paulie, my mic was off there when you said waiting around for the phone to ring. That my line was, that was me in high school. So I don't think anybody heard it the first time around, but yeah, I got a little bit more successful in university. But talking about opportunities, right?
It's because you attended every beer bash and took advantage of that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I was grinding out in the back of the room. Yeah, no.
Pretend for a second he wasn't doing that in high school.
Okay,
Also.
Yeah, it just wasn't working as well. But you talked about opportunities, and now this is kind of like a good segue to talk about the Ville Heinola situation, right? And just horrible. I think everybody, when that news broke, you're thinking to yourself, like, here we go again, right? A second year in a row where he's got an ankle issue in training camp. And obviously, he, by all accounts, would have made the team out of training camp last year. Yep. And, it looked like, this was Ville Heinola's year. Finally, he's going to earn that spot on the third pair on the left side. And now it looks like, he might miss. We don't know. I mean, we're going to have to wait to get more information from the team. But, I mean, I guess, can you just speak to, first off, just how terrible the timing is, and then that's going to mean that there's going to be an opportunity, whether that's Logan Stanley, whether that's a guy like Hayden Fleury, especially if Ville Heinola is going to be out for any significant amount of time, going into the regular season.
And I would imagine we're going to see Hayden Fleury at some point in the next 2 days play a game here to just get that opportunity.
Right.
The situation for me is a little bit different with Ville. Last year, he made the team. We understand that. Broke his ankle and then had a tough time getting back because, let's face it, he was behind a veteran who was making $6 million a year in Nate Schmidt.
Yeah.
And Nate played himself back in and was okay, was serviceable, ends up kind of parlaying what he did last year into a contract with Florida. This year, I think that when Ville does come back, and it's not a break, it's an infection, so that can be treated. They'll be careful with it because you want to be careful with infection. But I think he'll be back on the ice sooner than later. I mean, Scott Arniel talked yesterday about making sure it was a week or a little bit longer. We'll reassess. But I don't think that they're going to have anybody stand in Ville's way. I think that they're going to maybe push some people aside to give him that opportunity, as I believe he deserves this time around. He's done everything that he is supposed to do in order to earn a spot. And by some happenstance and maybe bad luck, here we are again, repeating the scenario of last year, just with a different type of ailment rather than just a break. It's now an infection aspect. So from that standpoint, I think we're going to see Ville as an NHLer. But it does open up the opportunities. And this is the other point that I want to make here. And that was talked about how deep this team is. Scott Arniel mentioned deep the other day in his first address. He didn't feel like there was questions about, the inactivity in the offseason about signing free agents. Well, they did. It just wasn't the high-priced guys. It wasn't the big-name guys. It wasn't the marquee guys, right? But it was guys that made their organizational depth much better, and the plug-and-play aspect, I think, is really at play for this team more so than the last couple of years.
Paulie, one of the interesting things I thought of yesterday was the goalie battle, because it's something we don't really take a factor in. We think, okay, Connor Hellebuyck good for 55, 60 games, what Scott Arniel said yesterday, but Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press had an interesting conversation with Capo Kahkonen. Eric Comrie's here. We hear, when I asked Mark Scheifele about it before formal skate began, how excited he was. But it's interesting, it's one thing we haven't had in Winnipeg. We've always kind of had the de facto, backup netminder. But how do you think that's going to play out in terms of creating that competition between Kahkonen and Eric Comrie?
Great battle. I wonder who has the edge going in, because somebody always does on paper. You've schemed about it, you've thought about it if you're the coaching staff, and then you want to see how it plays out. There was pretty good numbers for Capo Kahkonen last year in New Jersey, not necessarily in San Jose, but in New Jersey. And they did say that Kahkonen and Comrie are going to play the 2 games this weekend, and I think they're going to get the full games. So we'll find out probably around the skate here today who's going to get the number 1 nod today against Minnesota.
I think it's Kahkonen.
I do as well, and then that would be, by default, it would be Comrie's game tomorrow against Edmonton in his hometown, which kind of makes sense. So from that standpoint, this is great. I mean, let's see what happens, and at the very least, what you've got going down to the Manitoba Moose is a very competent goaltender at the AHL, NHL level. And that's going to make that team that much better and more competitive. So you're right, Dave, this is the first time we've seen a goaltender battle at training camp since 2011 when this team re-arrived. But I'm kind of going to welcome to watch that as something new going forward in the next 2 weeks.
I think that the Kahkonen signing is sort of shrewd, and it was a little bit under the radar because, almost all offseason before free agency day, everyone sort of earmarked that Eric Comrie was probably going to come back to this organization. And a lot of people thought that it was going to be in that backup role to Connor Hellebuyck, and people were maybe a little bit anxious about that. And then they go out and they sign Kahkonen as well. And to your point, Paulie, Kahkonen's numbers, in games he's even played here in Winnipeg with opposing teams, he's been a goalie who's been stuck on bad teams, and so as a result, his numbers might not look that great. But if you dig that layer deeper, I think that they have something there. I mean, not that anyone cares what my personal opinion is. I think he's likely going to start the year as the backup to Hellebuyck, and Comrie, being just such a great teammate, seems like the perfect mentor for a guy to further Thomas Milich's career at the Manitoba Moose level. But to me, Kahkonen is a bit of a shrewd signing for that guy who can come in, play 20 games, 20 to 25 games. We know it's not going to be a big number, but really come in and maybe be more than just a serviceable backup to Connor Hellebuyck.
I think your 25 games is pretty much bang on.
Yeah.
They tried to reduce the workload on Connor Hellebuyck last year to try to save more for the playoffs, and that's kind of the way the trend that the National Hockey League is going with their primary goaltenders. The other thing that we learned yesterday was that Kaapo Kahkonen wanted to be here.
Yeah.
And I think that when you are in the smallest market in the National Hockey League and you find players that are attracted to the scenario that you have here, and let's not forget, he wasn't coming out here to play golf in Falcon Lake. I mean, that wasn't exactly what attracted him here. It was the fact that he's playing behind a guy like Connor Hellebuyck, a two-time Vezina Trophy winner, that he can learn from as he advances in his career. He's seen the success rate of guys like Eric Comrie leaving,
sure,
Lauren Brossoit leaving twice, and now maybe wants to, through osmosis, learn some of those things. Not to mention the fact that Wade Flaherty, I don't think, gets the credit that he should as the goaltending coach and the way he has developed these goaltenders over the years. So that's attractive to a guy like Kahkonen as well. So you put it all together and you've got this goaltending battle for the backup spot. And let's be honest, Connor Hellebuyck has been the picture of health here.
Yeah.
There's never been a scenario where the Winnipeg Jets have had to rely on their backup for any extended period of time.
Right.
But it might be coming at some point. You never know.
Right.
I mean, you just never know. And so from that standpoint...
Bite your tongue from the Jets perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to be ready,
right,
inevitably, for that day to come. And I think they've got two guys that are serviceable to step into that role for an extended period if they have to.
Just one more thing on the goalies, Paulie. I think you made a really good point when you mentioned, regardless of who wins the NHL backup job, you're going to have a solid veteran to mentor Thomas Milic. And if you remember, of course you remember, last year goaltending was an issue for the Moose, right, with Oskari Salminen.
Until Milic came and solidified
right, exactly, right. And I don't think anybody expected Thomas Milic at the beginning of last season to play as many games in the AHL as he did, right? So to have two really good pro goalies in your system that you didn't really have last year, let's be honest, and people forget, Eric Comrie's last year as a backup with the Jets, he had 10 wins and he had his best save percentage numbers for any of his career in the NHL, right? So I'm with you. Even though Kaapo Kahkonen, you might say, has a little bit of an edge there, let's wait and see. And maybe Comrie ends up being that guy, and Kaapo Kahkonen is playing for the Moose, and that benefits them, right? I wanted to switch to a guy who hasn't been talked about a ton. Obviously, Cole Perfetti's being talked about a lot. Brad Lambert's being talked about a lot. There's lots of good players. I want to ask you about Gabe Vilardi, because Gabe Vilardi is in the last year of his current contract. Obviously, last year missed a significant amount of time. He's one of the guys I'm the most curious to see how he does early on in the season, just for the simple fact that not only, like I said, is he in the last year of his contract, but he's a guy, you remember, when the Jets were struggling on the power play, it was like Gabe Vilardi was the savior of the power play, right? And to me, his importance on this team can't be understated. And I'm just curious to hear what your opinion is on Gabe Vilardi, because this is such a crucial year for him, because he's obviously going to be looking for a big payday after the season ends.
Well, you'd like to see him play more than 40 games. And, I mean, even at that time, he had over 20 goals and was almost at 40 points. I mean, I think there's the potential for this guy to be a 30-goal scorer easily. not so sure about a point per game player, but what I really liked, and you specifically brought it up, as and that's the power play. There was something that was different about Gabe Vilardi's presence on the power play last year than we hadn't seen. And a lot of that was that goal line maneuver, that drop step move, to use a basketball term, if you will, the ability to kind of drop back with the puck and shoot, or pass, or put it into the middle, or it was just more of an option. And let's face it, the Jets power play got a little stagnant for the last couple of years. And that was fresh. That was a bit of a genesis to it. And it was effective. And until they take it away, then you're going to keep doing it. And if they take that away, something else opens up. So I'm really interested also to see what Gabe Vilardi does. I wonder, he got off to a bit of a bad start because Blake Lizotte decided that he was going to take an old teammate and slew-foot him in the corner and send him out. I mean, let's hope that doesn't happen again this year. But I also feel that the second year, you're more comfortable if you're Rasmus Kupari, Alex Iafallo, Gabe Vilardi. In the scenario here, you understand that you're on the last year of your deal because they only signed 2-year contracts. But there's nothing that you're not used to here, so you can concentrate on hockey. And if he has a great year, it's great for him and for the Winnipeg Jets. Let's see what happens. He'll play in the top 6. And I know that he's been a pretty good compliment the way he can play and get on the puck to Mark Scheifele and to Kyle Connor. So let's see if he gets out of the gate and has a really good year and a good start to it, because that would benefit both player and organization.
Paul Edmonds, our guest Saturday morning. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by PlayNow. Remember, come by our broadcast booth here live at Hockey for All Center. Enter to win the great PlayNow prize package that they have provided. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Paulie, the special teams were such a bugaboo for the Winnipeg Jets last year, and now we know that there's been a full-scale coaching change when it comes to the head man behind the booth with Scott Arneal, and then the assistant coaches that have been brought in. How important, from your perspective, we talked about this on the show last week, and I think we'll probably touch on it throughout the course of today's show and entering the start of the season. An improved special teams, both power play and penalty kill, to me is going to be a key driver for this team to get close to the same heights, or at least within the same realm of heights that they achieved last year during the regular season.
Okay, so a couple of points from that, Drew. We'll all remember last year.
Bailey's here, everybody. We got to say hi to Bailey. Anytime Bailey and family walk in, you got to say hi to Bailey in that
Bailey
case, and
family.
friends.
Hello,
and,
Bailey and family. Last year, at the start of the year, the penalty kill got ripped early on and often, and those numbers get skewed. I liken it to my baseball days, where you're a pitcher, you're a starting pitcher, you have a couple of bad outings at the start of the year, and you battle all year to get that ERA down. And even though you put together a couple of quality starts, it doesn't drop as much as you would like. Same thing with the penalty kill for the Winnipeg Jets. It got torched at the start of the year, and it had some moments where it got better, but it just couldn't bring the number down.
Right.
Notwithstanding the fact that it does indeed need to be better, because after the start of the year, when it did get better, then it kind of got away from them again. For the most part, other than Brendan Dillon, I think a lot of the good key people in that penalty kill stable are back, and Lowry and Appleton and DeMello. They've got to add a few guys, no question about it.
Right.
But it's not drastic for either of the two penalty kill, power play, specialty teams. You need to reduce a couple goals for sure on the penalty kill and add a couple on the power play. And I'm not talking about 20 on each side. 20 add, 20 reduce on the penalty kill. It might,
you would take it, though.
You would take it, but it might only need to be 8 more power play goals, 10 more power play goals, 7 less penalty kill goals against. Those numbers will change if you do that. So it's a tweak. It's not a hard tweak and getting to a spot where you got to be top 5. I mean, you always want, I think, to have a better penalty kill than a power play. You can be more serviceable and score more goals, especially with being the 5-on-5 team that they were last year.
Right.
The specialty teams, no doubt, have to improve. But I think that with some new coaching, some new eyes, Davis Payne on the power play, Dean Chenault on the penalty kill, we'll see what kind of wrinkles that they have. And if in following suit with some of their new ideas, the two specialty teams get better because they have to.
Paul, we're at the exciting part. All the young guys are still in camp. They haven't been sent back to their junior teams. Is there anyone in particular? I mean, remember, folks, forget, Colby Barlow signed his contract, but then dealt with illness all of last training camp, so he didn't get into any games. He's going to play his first game. Now, he's worn a Moose jersey, so he's got some familiarity, which I talked to him about yesterday. But getting to see him and Braden Yeager and, Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov tonight playing against the Wild, there's going to be a lot of excitement. Who are you in particular looking forward to watching?
All of those guys, but I'm also going to watch for, and I got to get this right because I asked him how to pronounce it, Elias Solomonson. And the reason for that is this kid can move. He's got good size, right-handed shot defenseman. And there was a lot of people around the organization that cover the team, not necessarily the organization itself, that feel that this guy can step in. And while he was in the Swedish Hockey League last year, it is a far departure from what you're going to see at the NHL level. Not necessarily in October, but certainly by March and further on as you get into the spring and early summer. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. He needs some time over here in North America. I want to see what he does. I really, truly want to see, with all of those guys that you mentioned, Dave, for me, Solomonson, let's see how he does in his first sort of opportunity to get on an NHL roster and play some exhibition games. I always like to tell the story about Josh Morrissey got inserted into game number 1 with Paul Maurice behind the bench for an exhibition game. Played pretty well. They thought, okay, he and Jamie Compon threw him right back in for game number 2. Well, he ended up playing all the exhibition games and made the team. They couldn't take him out of the lineup. Maybe there's a scenario for Solomonson that happens exactly like that. I'm not betting on it, but I want to see what he does with the opportunity. So with all of those guys that you've talked about, and I'm keeping my eye on all 4 of them, from the back end, I want to see what Elias Solomonson ends up doing.
And Paul, what's interesting is Kevin Cheveldayoff did a one-on-one in Penticton, and one of the comments I thought was interesting was that Scott Arniel said to him last summer, do we really have to send this kid back? So they already were kind of interested, and obviously it probably went well to his development to go back home to Sweden, play and win a championship. But it's interesting how the Jets were already excited about him last year. And remember, sent him to the Moose while they were deciding what they were going to do with him, because in theory, once he got removed from Jets training camp, they could have sent him back to Sweden immediately. But you knew they were thinking about it, and it's just interesting how now he's at a further year of development. And just to see how much more excited they're going to be now 1 year older.
Well, real quick on that, there's no hurry for him either. And I think that works to the advantage of the player and the organization, because you've got DeMello, Pionk, and Miller all on the right side. So you could take your time with him. Does he become a 7th defenseman? Perhaps. Or does he maybe go down to the Moose? I mean, where do you slot him at this point? But I think there's opportunity for him, and I'm going to watch that certainly with a keen eye as we go forward here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and Dave mentioned, Kevin Cheveldayoff in his comments about opportunity for the young players. That's sort of been the mantra all offseason, that these young players, it's almost like a changing of the guard a little bit within the roster, in that the next wave is coming up and is ready to step up and take that role. Just how important for the Jets' success this year do you think it will be for some of those young players to come up and grab that job and really, more probably up front than on the back end, Solomonson notwithstanding, but we've talked about Lambert, we talked about Chibrikov. The excitement has only grown for those 2 players since they got into game 82 last year. Just, from the chomping at the bit for them to get there, champing at the bit, pardon me, for them to get that role this year. How important do you think that is?
Well, I go back to the exit meetings and the exit interview with Kevin Cheveldayoff last year, and he talked about the cash injection into the league and how it's jumped by $4.5 million and might even go to another $5 million next year. But in saying that, he talked about how that you have, your upper end guys, and maybe some bourgeoisie in there, your upper middle class, but then you need the entry level contracts to push in. He talked about that. So it's important from the organization, the salary cap standpoint, to have that integration of those younger guys. Also, you need to be filling your funnel all the time, to use a sales term as well, from the standpoint that you have to have these guys pushing in. Otherwise, you age out real quick. And I don't think that the Jets have any idea of wanting to do that. They want to remain competitive. And one way of remaining competitive year after year is always to have young guys pushing into your lineup. So I think it's uber important, Drew, to have young guys coming into your lineup or knocking on the door as close as they might be. Certainly from the financial standpoint, but also from the competitive standpoint of your organization. And I believe that this is a year that we're going to see a couple of those guys push in.
Sorry, Ezzy, I thought you were going to go there. So, okay, another one of those young guys is Colby Barlow. I mean, I don't think anyone necessarily expects him to earn a job this year at the Winnipeg Jets level, but you talk about that opportunity. The focus has been on Brad Lambert, certainly. But to me, Colby Barlow is, again, there's a role that could be filled by a young guy like him. So he's a guy that I'm sort of keeping a particularly keen eye on as this training camp and as this preseason keeps going. What are you looking for from a guy like Barlow this offseason or this preseason?
And I'll throw Yager into the mix with Colby as well.
Sure.
I mean, this is Yager's second pro camp as well because he was down with Pittsburgh last year.
First year,
so the two of them are kind of tied together that way with their experience. Now, they're both 19 years old, so if they don't make the NHL, they have to go back to Major Junior, and that's different from Brad Lambert. So it's not like you can say, well, both guys were on the cusp of making our team here, but we're going to send them down to the Moose, and if there is an opportunity for them through injury, they're coming right back up. You don't have that once they go back to Major Junior. They have to stay there until their season's done. But I think they'll get a good rattle to see exactly what they can do. And I don't really think the Jets are concerned about, the 10-game aspect and turning the clock on for these guys. If one of them really kind of comes out and shows his wares, so to speak, and acquits himself very well on the ice. And Colby Barlow might be one of those guys. Braden Yager might be as well. I mean, both of them I showed, I believe, favorably for the most part, especially Braden Yager and Penticton.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, they'll have an eye on those two 19-year-olds. But again, I don't believe there's a hurry or a presence to push either one of these two teenagers into the lineup. There's other guys kind of ahead of them if you're looking for younger guys. The guy for me is Brad Lambert. I believe he makes the team this year. I just don't know where he makes the team. Does he make the team as a right winger? Does he make the team as a centerman? It looks like Vlad Nemestikov is going to be back anointed as that second-line center to get started here. But I think that Brad Lambert has an opportunity to be an NHLer when we go to Edmonton in October.
There's a hole on the right side of the right wing right now with Cole Perfetti's absence.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask my question now. When you look at the line, like, how much stock should we be putting into these line combinations, Paulie? Especially considering Cole Perfetti's not in camp. But when you look at Connor, Scheifele, Vilardi, I know some Jets fans, especially the vocal ones on social media, are saying, why isn't Ehlers up there, right? Like, are you expecting any movement there? Obviously, training camp, preseason, we're going to see different line combinations, but I guess, how much do you read into those Arneal line combinations early on here in training camp? Probably not much, right?
I saw a great line of a depth chart in front of a U18 game the other day, and it said, this is how we'll start. It's up to you on how we finish.
Yeah.
And it had the line combinations and the D pairs, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was great. This is how we start. It's up to you on how we finish. Because you could go from the second line to the fourth line or from the fourth line to the second line. So in taking sort of that axiom and applying it here, I think you probably start with that top line like that. Yeah. But there's also, let's not forget, when you come, if you're a fan and you're going to watch intently on what's going on and you're right down to the line charts and the depth charts and things that are going on, there's a starting place for all of this, but it's also experimentation. And you want to see how this guy plays with that guy in case there's an injury or something happens, or you need to make a trade, or you're going to bring somebody in. There's all kinds of scenarios. So the fact that we don't necessarily see Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello paired together to start training camp doesn't mean that they're not going to be playing together. And yeah, when you have the Connor, Scheifele, and Vilardi line, they're matched together as a trio. That could change as well. So to answer your question succinctly, Drew, I don't put a lot of stock into what I see right now when it comes to line combinations and D pairs, but what you have seen traditionally is probably what you're going to see, unless, of course, a guy like Brad Lambert makes that jump to a second line right winger spot and maybe starts to outperform somebody else as the season or the beginnings of the season go along.
All right, Paulie, we've talked about a lot of the higher end guys that everybody's got their eyes on. Is there anybody that's, I think we're only day 3 here of camp, and of course we were watching some guys skate before they left for Penticton last week. Anybody else kind of grabbing your eye? Anybody else that you've kind of noticed? And again, maybe not necessarily penciling in for the Jets this year, but you're thinking, okay, I'm going to take note of that, and I'm going to watch this guy.
Mason Shaw. Ironically,
No hesitation there at
no,
all.
and the reason for that is I'm going to talk to him today, and we're going to air it, hopefully, on our pregame show, because we're dropping the puck tonight. Here's a kid from Lloydminster, Wainwright, Alberta. I understand, loves to work on the farm. The kind of guy that we've kind of wanted here. It kind of represents the prairie sort of way. Spent a lot of time in the Minnesota Wild organization with Iowa. Is a center, left wing, speedy kind of guy, a depth guy we talked about with Hayden Fleury, as you mentioned. That's the other guy. So I want to see where Mason Shaw is. Does Mason Shaw come in, acquit himself very well at the NHL level, and say, hey, I can go down to the Moose, I can perform very well, I can be one of your leaders down there, but I'm ready to go if I need to get the call, or if somebody needs to call me to come up. So for me, Mason Shaw would be that guy that succinctly I'll answer the question to, David.
Last one for you. It's a little inside baseball, if you will, but for the first preseason game, where it's a lot of guys you might not necessarily be familiar with, not so much on the Jets because you're embedded in here, but on the opposing team. How difficult of a broadcast is that from your perspective?
I was looking at it today, and there's a couple of names that I know. Declan Chisholm's, I believe, going to play for Minnesota tonight.
There you go.
So
him.
that would be one. But on the way here, I'll know the Jets lineup fairly well because we are familiar with these guys and these kids. But it might be a little bit, here come the Wild, there go the Wild. The Wild will dump it in. Wild back to retrieve it. So what I find more difficult is you'll get ready for today's game, but then you turn around tomorrow, we're on a plane as broadcasters, and I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong, but to take you inside of what goes on and how you're thinking, tomorrow's lineup is going to be completely different for the Jets, and now you're learning another sort of young lineup from Edmonton's perspective. And as broadcasters and the coaches, you're probably the only ones that are repeating the performance. So that's when it gets kind of tricky, is that turnaround time on the back-to-back games in a different city against a different team.
Well, it's training camp for everybody. Players, broadcasters, everybody top to bottom throughout the organization. Paulie Edmonds, always an A-plus appearance with us here on Illegal Curve. It was a year ago, probably to the day that you were on with us. We'll see you again in a year's time.
Yeah, standing invitation, I'm in. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Can I have the Air Canada headset back again?
You can. That's, talk to producer Tim about that. The budget is what the budget is. You take it what you can get. There he is, Paul Edmonds, our good friend here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live at Hockey for All Center, Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest. It's a great day, great opportunity. Come down, join us here. Enter the PlayNow contest. That's live at our broadcast booth. Jets dogs are over there. The Ninja Turtle bouncy castle. Lots going on. When we come back, hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Big thanks to everyone for joining us. Keep coming. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
We want to thank you for not betting with PlayNow and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with PlayNow, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whatever your day throws at you, Kids Eat Free is back at Boston Pizza to turn it all around. With free kids meals and family fun all September long. Plus, Mario and friends are taking over with an exclusive kids booklet and more. All free with minimum purchase all month long.
Couple minutes after the top of the hour, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, broadcasting live this morning from Hockey for All Center, Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest. Always a great day down here as you see so many fans. A lot of people eating hot dogs at a very early hour.
Including Hustler.
I'm pretty sure that's Hustler's second dog, to be honest. I'm not sure if that's number 1 or number 2. Not that we're counting or keeping an eye on him, but we've managed to keep Ezzy away from the hot dog cart so far.
Let Huss enjoy his hot dog. Just let him enjoy his hot dog.
There you go. It's all good. Everybody down here having a great time. So come check us out. Come check out our broadcast location here at Hockey for All Center. We got a great prize package from our friends at PlayNow. They are the official sponsor of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Sign up for PlayNow and get a casino welcome bonus up to $150. PlayNow is Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site and the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Of course, you must be 18 plus. Conditions apply. Please enjoy responsibly.
We're going to need a bigger ballot box here. We got Jason Sheps putting in an entry here, but that ballot box is getting pretty stuffed right now.
It is. People want the prize package from our friends at PlayNow, is what that's definitely showing us. Sarah Orleski going to join the program coming up in about 25 minutes time or so, right at the bottom of the hour. Dave, you have something I can see on your mind.
No, I was just going to say, and we'll get it. We talked earlier. We know the roster for the game against the Wild tonight, but we didn't know what the lines are going to look like. And I know folks love preseason lines and
I have them up here. Do you want me to read them
off?
off?
I was just going to say they just got, but the reason I'm saying that is because they just got underway skating at one of the rinks near us. So if you want to come see them, you can, and then afterwards, come see us.
So Alex Iafallo, Brad Lambert, and Gabe Vilardi, Nikita Chibrikov, Vlad Nemesnikov, Mason Appleton, Barlow, Yeager, and Barron, and then Julian, Shaw, and Levis. So again, the mix of the young and the old. On the back end, it's Dylan Samberg and Solomonson, no longer a Salomonson, according to Paulie Edmonds, Solomonson.
I don't think a player has had a request for their name, because earlier in the last week, Kelly Moore of CJOB asked him exactly how to pronounce his name, and I'm fairly certain it was different. So I think he's offered about 5 or 6 different interpretations of how to say his name properly.
I was calling him Patrick Eliash Salomonson, but it's Elias Solomonson.
There you go. Almost got it right there. On the back end, as I mentioned, Samberg and Solomonson, Dimitri Kuzmin and Tyrell Bauer, and then Dylan Anhorn and Colin Miller. Dawson Bartow is rotating in, and Hayden Fleury was listed on the game roster but isn't on the ice. This all courtesy of our buddy Mitchell Clinton, who of course is the radio analyst for the Winnipeg Jets. We'll be doing the game alongside Paulie Edmonds. That game, of course, available with our friends at CJOB and 680 and Power 97. Actually, there's a Bomber game tonight, so I'm not entirely certain which is on which station. I think maybe the Jets might be on Power 97 and the Bombers are on CJOB, but either way, 680 AM or 97.5 FM. That's how you know where you can catch the game. And of course, all the post-game coverage. The post-game show hasn't quite started up yet. Still a couple weeks away from that from the Illegal Curve post-game show.
We don't do pre-game, post-game.
We don't do pre-game, post-game. We don't do preseason post-game. But of course, the entire recap will be available on illegalcurve.com, just like all the audio from today's broadcast available on illegalcurve.com. Want to make mention, as we get back into the Jets conversation, an exciting welcome aboard here with Illegal Curve to our friends at City Place. As you all remember, during the playoffs last year, we did a pregame show at City Place prior to the Winnipeg Jets home playoff games for this coming season. Once a month, we're going to be doing a live noon hour show at City Place. So more details to come on that front, but a big welcome back to our friends at City Place downtown. We're going to be up in the food court once a month doing a broadcast on Winnipeg Jets game days to sort of get you excited for some of the most prominent games, marquee games on the calendar. So big thanks to our friends at City Place for their continued support. They're signing up again to support us at a legal curve, and we look forward to being down there this season as well.
Yeah, very excited to welcome City Place as a full-time sponsor. I've spent a lot of time in that food court, as you know, Drew. I've worked downtown for many years, so why not talk some Jets while we're in the process?
That's right. They call that food court the food court that Ginsburg built. So might as well keep it going.
I'm honored. I really am.
It's true. It is quite the honorarium that you're receiving there. What I wanted to talk about briefly, we talked about with Paulie, the backup goaltending battle. I think is an interesting one to sort of keep an eye on. And as I mentioned when we were just talking about it, I do think that Kahkonen signing, and there's a great article in today's Free Press about him, talking about actually he's a foodie apparently, just like we are, as you and I are known for our as connoisseurs of fine food. But he, to me, is a guy that I think is really going to find a niche here with the Winnipeg Jets. And I know I'm probably putting cart before the horse a little bit, but I do think that he's got the inside track as being the backup to Connor Hellebuyck, and then Eric Comrie being the 1B, 1A, whatever you want to say, with Thomas Milic at the Manitoba Moose level. But I think Kahkonen, the Jets have been really good, in terms of finding sort of under the radar backup goaltenders that work well with Connor Hellebuyck. And admittedly, it's early, but I think that Kahkonen could be another one of those guys who are going to come in, maybe outperform expectations, and then move on to bigger and better things in years to come.
Well, when you talk about expectations, guys, if you want to take a step back for a second, I mean, you had a goalie last year in Lauren Brossoit who gave you 15 wins.
Yeah.
And gave you whatever it was, 928 save percentage.
Beautiful numbers.
I think his goals against average was 2.00. Obviously, that's a team stat. But the point is, the Jets arguably had the best backup goalie in the NHL. Maybe
the best goaltending tandem.
The Boston Bruins might have something to say about that with Swayman and Allmark. But the point being that Lauren Brossoit was a 10 out of 10 as a backup goalie. So the expectations are very high for that position, right?
Yeah.
I think it wasn't by mistake that the Jets went out and signed Comrie and Kahkonen on the same day, because they know whichever goaltender isn't Connor Hellebuyck's backup for the majority of the season is going to play a significant amount of games in the American Hockey League with Thomas Milic, right? So I think it's very interesting what you bring up about Kaapo Kahkonen, right? He started the season with the Sharks. Obviously, his numbers weren't great. The Sharks were one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst.
To have good numbers with the Sharks.
And then the Devils acquired him because we know the Devils' goaltending situation was a complete mess. Obviously, Kaapo Kahkonen wasn't the long-term answer there. That's why they went out and they acquired Jacob Markstrom. But Kahkonen has been around the league for a long time. This is not a 21-year-old goaltender here. This is a guy who's played significant games in both the NHL and the AHL. So it's going to be a battle, right? And I have absolutely no idea. Obviously, Scott Arniel, the coaching staff, they're not going to tip their cap in terms of what goalie has the advantage. But like you said, Drew, it's something that we haven't seen last year and the year before and the year before. You had either Lauren Brossoit or Eric Comrie, as you knew that was going to be the backup. So to me, healthy competition is a great thing.
Absolutely.
And that's only going to benefit both the Jets and the Moose. So yeah, we're going to see Kaapo Kahkonen get the whole net tonight. And then tomorrow against Edmonton, we're going to see Eric Comrie. As Paulie mentioned, that's his hometown, so that's a no-brainer to let Eric Comrie start for the Jets in Edmonton. But to me, this is nothing but positive, great stuff, Dave, to have two great goaltenders. And like I said, I don't know who has the edge right now, but regardless if it's Kahkonen or Comrie who plays the majority of the season with the Jets, the Moose are going to get a really good goalie to go with Milic.
Yeah, and I also think that it's people saying it's not a big deal. Well, it still is a big deal because Paul's right. I mean, if you have a situation where Connor Hellebuyck can't play, then you need a guy who's capable of doing it. I like the Kahkonen signing. I'm with Drew. If you look at his numbers when he's not on a terrible team, and what a surprise. That goes for a lot of goaltenders. If they're not on terrible teams, their numbers can improve. But I think I thought Mike's interview with him was very interesting. And again, that's linked in the morning paper, so go check that or go directly to the Free Press. But come to the Legal Curve first, then go to the Free Press. But the point is that, to me, he sought Winnipeg out. He wanted to be in this environment. The idea that he could work, see what they did with Eric Comrie, to Ezzy's point, see what they did with Laurent Brossoit. And again, with all due respect to Connor Hellebuyck, that's a Wade Flaherty situation. He's seeing and Scott Arniel was asked about it, saying that it's a bit of almost like a goalie factory a little bit here in Winnipeg based on what these guys are seeing and what their improvement in their game. So to me, Kahkonen made a very intentional decision to sign in Winnipeg, clearly, but also because he saw it as an opportunity for his career. And I think that's significant because you're saying to yourself, hey, how can I do something that's going to further myself? Well, he's showing you what he's going to do. He's going to come here and he's going to fight for that opportunity. And Winnipeg was his choice, not like, okay, well, I got to sign in Winnipeg. So, and I think it's best for the organization to say, listen, now we've got two guys who are capable, and people can poo-poo Eric Comrie all they want, but I think, especially in that backup role, especially in the familiarity of the Winnipeg organization, you're going to have a guy who feels comfortable, and we'll see it, I think, as he in his play. So it's going to be a real good battle to watch, but to your point, they're going to get a guy down with Thomas Milic who is going to, complement them and is going to show that, like, listen, if you're not up in the NHL, you're going to be a good, leader in the AHL.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge factor for the Winnipeg Jets, and that having that confidence in having a backup and having confidence in a guy that you can rely on. It's not going to be a significant amount of games. It never is, barring injury. And if there's an injury to Connor Hellebuyck, then whatever the game plan is basically thrown out, and you're now trying to piece something together from the beginning. But just having that guy to be able to step in and have confidence, that he's going to give you serviceable goaltending plus, not just the bare minimum, but even more than that. And I think that the Jets have probably gone out and done that as have somebody that they feel is a reliable option for them in that sense. And I think that's important.
Absolutely, and we know that Kahkonen, he can face a lot of rubber. Like, right, he was seeing a lot of rubber in San Jose, and he was seeing a lot of rubber in New Jersey. I hate to admit that. That's why they had to go out and bolster their defense.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who is, look, it's a step back from Laurent Brossoit. I don't think we can really sugarcoat that a little bit. I think, Laurent Brossoit wanted to go and get a full-time job.
But you knew after his performance last year you were going to lose Laurent Brossoit.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, it's not the same quality of goaltender. Laurent Brossoit is a better goaltender, but you have two options here, and I think even though Connor Hellebuyck has been healthy for the majority of his career, to Dave's point, I mean, it's good to have that bench strength and have Comrie in the AHL, or maybe if it's Kahkonen in the AHL, if Comrie is up with the Jets. But I think, guys, this just speaks to the fact that there's training camp battles happening this year, maybe that a little bit different than in previous years, right? Cole Perfetti's absence and Ville Heinola's injury have changed that a little bit. But you look at that fourth line, guys, or whatever you want to call it, the bottom six, and there's going to be some good players that are not waivers exempt that don't make the Jets top 12 or even top 13. Like, I'm thinking Rasmus Kupari. I'm thinking Axel Jonsson-Fjällby. Like, I'll go back to, I don't know exactly
Mason
when it was,
Shaw,
November.
Like Paulie was saying Mason Shaw is a guy who's in a battle.
Sure, Mason Shaw is a guy that is kind of in that same Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, Dominic Toninato situation. Again, so these are all good options, but, if you want a little bit more of a physical fourth line as opposed to maybe a little bit more of a talented fourth line, maybe a Mason Shaw. I don't know if Mason Shaw is going to be able to crack the top 12, maybe as the 13th forward, but, Alex Iafallo for now is penciled into your top 6 just because Cole Perfetti's not there, but we expect Iafallo to be a guy that, along with Nemesnikov and maybe you throw in David Gustafsson, those are fourth line guys. I haven't even thrown in Morgan Barron, right? So, like, there's a lot of intrigue here at training camp in terms of, who's going to get that last forward spot on the fourth line. Who do you prefer as a 13th forward? Is it Axel Jonsson-Fjällby? Is it Rasmus Kupari? Scott Arniel mentioned the team is not going to be carrying 3 goalies. They're going to be carrying 13 forwards and 7 defensemen. So just do the math. I mean, there's going to be an odd man or odd 2 men out.
And that doesn't even factor in if one of the other young guys that are talked about but not necessarily thought of as going to be NHL players this year, have a tremendous training camp and go in and steal a job? A guy like Chibrikov, can he steal a job? A Jaeger, a Barlow, can they come in and steal a job to start this year? Then that changes everything and really throws, the best laid plans for a bit of a loop. By the way, that's a good thing to have happen.
For sure, but the only player that people seem to forget, which is hilarious because everybody was talking about him last year, is Parker Ford. And Parker Ford was...
You saw Parker Ford more than anybody in the city of Winnipeg last year, except for, the Jets, management themselves.
Sure.
But so why don't you, maybe sort of, talk a little bit about Parker Ford and what he brought to the table for the Moose last year, because we did see him a little bit and stand out in the preseason for the Jets, last year. So, what did you see from Parker Ford as a member of the Moose last season?
I'm just saying I saw Brandon Tanev light, and I saw a guy who's kind of like, he's an efficient player. He took some time. I mean, college is a big change from college to the pro game, and while you're playing with other big guys, right, or older guys, the thing is, you don't play as many games. So for Parker Ford, who was the only player last year for the Moose, played all 72 games. But I just think it's funny how, like last year, he was the 13th forward. He was the guy that everybody was talking about. Parker Ford is supplanted X, Y, or Z to be that 13th forward, and then he went to the Moose and everyone kind of forgot about him. He went down, he had a good campaign with the Manitoba Moose on the wing. I just think he's a guy who's, again, he's an efficient player. And he's a guy who I think brings a certain level of tenacity and net front presence, right? As something that, again, he's not afraid to mix it up. So that to me is the interesting thing. And again, like I said, there's always those types of players who, every kind of galvanizes the market. Everybody wants to talk about him. And then they kind of, okay, well, they forget because, now he's down with the Moose. And again, the Jets are more likely to call up. They wanted to give the organization, I believe, wanted to give Ford that opportunity to just really refine his game at the American League level and then give him another shot this year. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying he's got any leg up or leg down or a leg at all, but the fact, well, I know he has two legs.
I hope he's got a leg still.
But the fact of the matter is...
If he doesn't, that's a story we've been missing covering in thorough detail.
But the reality for Parker Ford is, like him, there could be someone else who's going to go and grab that mantle as 50 Ford, or it could very well could be Parker Ford.
I think there's a lot about Parker Ford's game. Dave, the type of hockey that I like, and Parker Ford plays that type of hockey. Like you said, he plays that agitating, physical style, but he's a guy that also has a touch around the scoring net, right? Yep. We saw that in Providence, right? And with the Moose last year. I just think that there's going to be too many veterans that he's going to have to beat out for a fourth-line role. Because as we've talked about, it looks, guys, like there's a really good shot that Brad Lambert is in your top 12. Like a really good shot. Whether that's on center...
sorry to interrupt, Ezzy, but at this point, I would say, especially given the Cole Perfetti situation, it would be a surprise if he's not with the Jets to start the regular season. You factor in his performance as of late has been strong, but so I'll let you continue on with that thought, but I would agree with you there.
Yeah, no, and look, if that bumps somebody that was in the top 6 last year in theory, and yes, Cole Perfetti's situation is unknown, but let's assume Cole Perfetti is signed and starts the season with the Jets, then you're looking at a second line where you've got Brad Lambert, Cole Perfetti, and Nick Ehlers. I'm not sure. Like, that's the thing. There's a lot up in the air because last year Cole Perfetti started as the second-line center, but he played on the wing. So we're going to assume for now, guys, that Perfetti's going to start on the wing. So is Lambert your second-line center to start off? Is that how he makes the team? It's really unclear right now. So then that's going to bump somebody else out of the lineup. So is that going to be Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, who's not the 13th forward? Is that going to be does that mean David Gustafsson is the 13th forward? Does that mean Rasmus Kupari is the 13th forward? It depends, because I think we would all agree that Alex Iafallo and Morgan Barron, I mean, those guys are making the team. I mean, it's just, and it goes without saying. Well, and most likely those are fourth-line guys.
Yeah, Morgan Barron is a player. I mean, again, you asked Paulie, I don't remember, I think it was you, Dave, who asked Paulie about Gabe Vilardi. Oh, sorry, Ezzy asked about Gabe Vilardi, and how he's really, there's no chatter about Gabe Vilardi this offseason at all.
Fourth line.
No, I'm not. I agree with you there. But Morgan Barron is another guy who is another year established with the Winnipeg Jets. I think this is a guy who still has untapped upside and has room to grow, as a member of this Jets. Now, whether or not he necessarily gets that opportunity, because last year he was sort of at that bottom of the lineup, and even though there were times where I wouldn't have mind seeing him maybe take on that Mason Appleton role or take on an elevated role in the Jets lineup, this is a guy who I do believe has a lot of room to grow and room to continue to improve his standing within the Winnipeg Jets organization. The start of training camp, we saw Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton together, just like we did really all of last year.
Yeah.
And they performed admirably, and that was a very solid line for the Winnipeg Jets. But just because that line was solid, I don't think that should mean that you don't look to find ways to maybe improve upon it even more. Just because you were good, it doesn't mean that they were optimizing the lineup with those three together, written in stone. That there might be another opportunity for that good line to become a great line, depending on a reshuffling of the responsibilities.
Well, and not to dodge your question, but as a complete aside, because we talked to Nino Niederreiter yesterday, and he said something that blew my mind. He's the oldest guy on the team.
Yeah, I know.
Which I was just like, what? Nino Niederreiter is it was weird to hear.
That made me feel really old.
Well, you are really old there, as he said. That's why you felt really old.
But anyways, I just thought that was funny when he was talking about how he's the old guy now on the team. But look, I think you're right, Drew. I think that the Jets were a good team last year. I mean, I know that people seem to forget because of the playoffs. Yeah. They were a good regular season team.
They were very good regular season team.
And they had success. Yeah. But one of the keys was, remember, they had no Kahkonen. They had no Gabriel Vilardi. They had guys step up, and they continued within the framework of the system they were playing to eke out wins. And you could say Connor Hellebuck had a big role. Of course he did. And what did we say last year? You don't apologize for having the best goaltender in the NHL. They obviously did. They won the Vezina. But my point is, whether it's a Morgan Barron, who, as he's been talking about for a long time, stepping up and taking on a bigger role, I don't think, there's always ways to improve, because ultimately you failed. You didn't achieve your goals, which was to at least win a few rounds in the playoffs. I mean, forget about, obviously, every guy's goal on that team and in every NHL team is to win the Stanley Cup. But to me, if you didn't do it, then there really shouldn't be anything written in stone. Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Gabriel Vilardi, that shouldn't be written in stone. Adam Lowry, Nino Niederreiter, and Mason Appleton, that shouldn't be written in stone. Or if you're going to write it in stone, then maybe you adjust the manner in which the ice time is doled out this year, so that truly becomes a third line, a shutdown line. Fine, it goes up against the McDavids to try and prevent them from scoring. But maybe you try and find different ways to reduce their ice time so you can get that second line out to be more efficient. And because remember, the Jets didn't score a ton of goals last year. They prevented a ton of goals at 198 or 199, whatever it ended up being, obviously enough to win the William Jennings. But to me, it's not specifically on one player. And I'm not trying to avoid the question, Drew, but I just think it's so early in training camp that we'll see which of these guys is ready. Because, what did we talk about when we started the show? We said, we don't even know what guys look like after summer. We haven't seen what guy, remember, one of the biggest things, and whether it's cliche or not, they spoke about was, got to get that 5% better. Well, who did it, Ezzy? Who went and took their training to that next level? People ask me about Tyrell Bauer, who's going to be in today's game, right shot defenseman, Jets prospect. I said, well, can he play? Well, you know what, again, maybe. I mean, again, we know what he does physically, but what did he do from a skating perspective over the summer? Did he improve his skating to get to that next level? We'll find out when training camp progresses with all of these battles. So it's gonna be fascinating, and anybody who says otherwise isn't paying attention to illegalcurve.com.
Any opportunity to get the plug in. That's why Dave M is a company man. Sarah Orlesky set to join us coming up momentarily here at the Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest. It is a zoo. To put it mildly, everyone's having a great time. The hot dogs are flying. People, the Bombers, you got Bomber jerseys, you got Jets jerseys, you got everything under the sun.
Got Gabe here?
Dancing Gabe is here, as you would expect. Producer Tim doing the great job that he is. We're having a lot of fun here. We'll go to break. When we come back, Sarah's going to join us. More Jets talk to come Saturday morning. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by our friends at PlayNow. We're live at Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest.
We want to thank you for not betting with PlayNow and choosing our illegal gambling sites instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with PlayNow, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whatever your day throws at you, Kids Eat Free is back at Boston Pizza to turn it all around, with free kids meals and family fun all September long. Plus, Mario and friends are taking over with an exclusive kids booklet and more, all free with minimum purchase all month long.
Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live at Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest. Hockey for All Center is the place to be on this Saturday morning, let me tell you. Normally, it's, of course, the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, and that's a good place to be as well. But today, it's a combination of both Hockey for All Center and our YouTube channel, because that's where all the Winnipeg Jets talk happens on a Saturday morning.
If the Illegal Curve Hockey Show wasn't enough, we've got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Bouncy Castle and some of the best hot dogs in the business right here with the Jets dogs. Obviously, we've got Huss and Remus here. They're going to be broadcasting right after us. Winnipeg Sports Talk. Sarah Orlesky's coming up. We've got Dancing Gabe right here. I mean, everything is happening right now, Drew.
It's all, that's why this is always a fun show. This is always something we look forward to on the calendar. Sort of circle it there, that this is always going to be a good opportunity. Really, the start of the season is what this feels like, Dave, as we've talked about before. The excitement is palpable, the fun. Hope springs eternal. I know it's an old cliche, but there's usually never much bad news happening this time of year. Unfortunately for the Winnipeg Jets, it hasn't been necessarily the perfect start to the 24-25 season, with the Ville Heinola injury news and with Cole Perfetti being a little MIA, an issue that, of course, the Jets and Perfetti, and I'm sure their particular representation, want to get resolved sooner rather than later. But the players who are here need to use that as an opportunity to move forward and get things, take advantage of the opportunity. It's sitting there for them. Can they go ahead? Can they steal a job as a result? Can they sort of capitalize on the opportunity that happens to be presented to them?
Yeah, that's going to be the, we don't know what their salary is, so I can't say how many millions, Ezzy, that question is. But I mean, that is why we watch training camp, and that's why you don't say this guy is pencil is marked in with a pen. It's all with pencil at this point. I mean, obviously, the big dogs are who they are, and there's no real question.
The big dogs are over there.
Yeah, the hot dogs are over there.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to make Timmy's job a little bit easier by not interjecting too much, but otherwise poor Timmy's trying to give us clear audio, but also ensure that we can have a lively conversation. So he definitely earns his bread on this show, right, guys? But no, I just think that there's so many fascinating. That's why I said, even the goaltending battles or the defensive battles, especially now that Ville Heinola opens up a spot for a Hayden Fleury. We don't know why. We're going to hear from.
So there's some, I mean, this is what Kelly Moore was reporting, that Hayden Fleury's wife is due to give birth any day now. So perhaps that day may be today. So that could be why he's not on the ice, even though he was expected to be on the ice as part of the group playing today.
Right.
Don't know that for sure. Hopefully we have a good news story in that sense, and that's why he's not playing. But obviously that will, the answer to that question will come sooner rather than later.
Okay, so there you go. But my point is that, you know, we're going to see this opportunity, right, as that all of these guys are going to have. And do I expect Braden Yeager or Colby Barlow not to be playing junior? No, I don't. But I also don't know that they're not capable of shocking someone and doing what Mark Scheifele did in his first year before he got sent back to Barrie, which was to play, you know, what did he play, 9 games with the Jets before they sent him back to Barrie. And it's amazing because we were talking about Mark Scheifele. Amazing to think he's already doing his 14th training camp as a pro. I mean, that is shocking. And of course, he went back to Barrie for a number of years. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, that's why I said there's so much excitement to watch these guys like whether it's a Yeager, whether it's somebody else, a Parker Ford, or even an Axel Jonsson-Fielby or a Dominic Toninato. You don't know what these guys have done to date. Right. Again, we've watched them a little bit, and people are like, well, what's this guy done in camp? And I'm like, listen, I am barely keeping my head above water with 53 players on. So, and look,
and they all are clamoring to talk to you. That's the most impressive part. Usually, you know, the Jets PR staff have to bring players out to the media. The players are just swarming Dave Minuk one after the other after the other. That's how high demand you are.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I'll just close on this one. Like, the other thing we're not even mentioning is guys like Chaz Lucius, who you know was yellow in a yellow non-contact as he too recovers from his ankle surgery, you know, and he didn't have any contact, which is the reason why he was in yellow last week. They're going to slowly bring him on. I don't know if he's even going to play any preseason games, other than they're trying to give him a kind of a long runway to get healthy, because they need. Chaz Lucius is a guy, Ezzy, who I am watching for this year. I know that people are like, oh, bust. Look, he's gone through a laundry list of injuries: his knee, his shoulder, heads and toes. You know, like his ankle. There's no question that Chaz Lucius has already had a lifetime of injuries from as a hockey player. But you can see the skill, and we saw him moving well in a regular jersey with Danny Zhilkin and Kevin He yesterday at training day 2 of training camp. So here's another player who's a young player who has a lot of possibility, has a good shot. Skating looked good yesterday. There's another guy I'm looking forward to just watching in training camp and seeing what he can do.
And even though, boys, you know, most likely Colby Barlow, Braden Yeager, those guys aren't going to make the team, and those guys are going to go back to junior, because obviously Colby Barlow, he's not eligible to play in the American Hockey League, right?
Yeah.
Should mention that in there. But what you're seeing is like the future on display. And we've talked a lot about, you know, Nikolaj Ehlers, he's in the last year of his contract, but also Alex Iafallo is in the last year of his contract. Yeah. Mason Appleton is in the last year of his contract. And I'm not saying that Iafallo and Appleton, there's not a chance they re-sign and stay with the Jets, but you're looking at the future and you're seeing Yeager's going to be on this team in a year or two, right? Colby Barlow's going to be on this team a year or two. Brad Lambert looks like he's going to be on the team this year, especially with Cole Perfetti right now not in the picture. I mean, those two are tied together, right? Like, we just don't know how long this is going to go on. We thought Perfetti was going to be signed before training camp started, well before training camp started, and here we are, and he's not under contract. I still think he's going to sign a deal in the next week or so, but that's maybe just, you know, blind faith.
You know, a week or so is not an insignificant period of time. If I recall correctly, when Morrissey missed the start of training camp, he almost signed the Sunday after the start of training camp, like the tomorrow dates. But for Perfetti, I mean, if you're talking, I mean, and I know you're just, you know, you're just throwing out dates, as in you're not saying that it's going to be a week or it's going to be tomorrow or it's going to be 2 weeks or whatever it's going to be.
Ginsburg guarantee.
No, his Ginsburg guarantees are so meaningless that you might as well not even say the word Ginsburg guarantee anymore. But these are significant missed reps. You know, you talk about, you know, if you go back to football, and sometimes you'll see a guy who comes out of nowhere in a football training camp, and they're saying, you know, he's stealing reps. He's going in there, he's taking every opportunity, and that's not a negative, by the way, stealing reps. He's sort of cutting the line because he wants to be noticed. You know, Perfetti, you know, he doesn't. It's not that he needs to be noticed. Everyone notices him, but these are reps you're missing out on. These are reps you're missing out on an opportunity to improve and get better and, you know, enmesh yourself even more within the leadership group of the organization. And I'm not blaming him. I think the Jets organization probably holds responsibility as well. There's enough blame to go around to both sides that it's a wide problem for to have. But there needs to be a coming together, a kumbaya moment that prevents this from continuing to be an issue, because it's not beneficial for either side. It's not beneficial from the Perfetti camp. It's not beneficial, of course, from the Jets camp. And to some extent, Perfetti's camp needs to realize, I do believe, that they don't have a ton of leverage, that they don't have, the arbitration rights. Is it worth, whatever the dispute is it worth missing games? And from the Jets' perspective, is it worth grinding so hard that this guy who's should be a key contributor isn't in your lineup? You don't have, we're not talking about a 7 or an 8 year contract at this point in time. You can find common ground on a year contract and go back and do this again next summer if you want to, if you need to. I just think that there's got to be a time where both sides say, look, there's got to be a way that we can move this forward without it being detrimental to both of our causes.
Drew, something that you touched on there, which is something that we talked about with Paulie Edmonds, is that you don't want this to affect the start of Perfetti's season. You don't want this to affect his season period, right? Meaning, if he misses those preseason games, like you said, those reps, is that going to mean that he's going to have a slower start to the season? And the reality is, guys, once Perfetti signs and once the season starts and he gets his first goal and then he gets another goal, we're not going to be talking about this. Like, it's not something that we're going to be talking about, but we will be talking about it if he gets off to a slow start.
Sure.
Because we're going to say, well, Perfetti didn't join Jets training camp until day 5 or day 6 or day 10 or whatever it is.
He's a week or 2 weeks behind.
Is he a week or two weeks behind? And we know, guys, that a huge reason why the Jets finished second in the Central was how well they did in the first half of the season, right? So the Jets need him for that season opener on October 9th versus Edmonton. They need him to be basically, the Cole Perfetti that we saw at his peak last year. And so, I think you're a little bit concerned right now that, we're in day 3 of training camp and this is still going on. But, I mean, he's going to sign eventually. We're going to forget about this. But hopefully, you'd have to just, again, hopefully, Perfetti, because he's been taking such good care of himself, we've been hearing how much he's been training, working on his skating. Hopefully, this doesn't affect him and he's ready to go for game 1 and, he's good to go and it's not going to affect him at all. But, I mean, you hear time and time again when players are not in formal training camp and they're not playing in preseason games that they feel at least a step or 2 behind.
Well, I think, as he makes a good point about the Jets, having been so successful last year, early in the year, the last couple of years, to be honest, they've had that greater success early in the season where the games count, they count in the standings as much as they do in January and February. And Murat wrote a really interesting article about that this week, Dave, talking about how the Jets need to continue to, twofold. They need to continue to be successful early in the year, and at the same time, they need to find a way so that they don't have that second half slide that they've really had relatively often ever since the year they got knocked out by St. Louis in that first round of the playoffs. That's always been where they've had that second half slide. We've seen it for a number of years now. So the Jets, they need to find a way to have that early season success and continue it throughout the course of the latter half of the year.
Well, that's true. I mean, I don't know what you want. No, that's not true, Joe.
In the context of Cole Perfetti potentially not being in your lineup.
No, of course. And again, like at Chaz's point, does that give Brad Lambert the leg up? Now, again, you wanted him to be a center. Are you going to put him at center and move Nemestikov to the wing and play him there? Again, there's so many question marks, but for sure, one of the things Adam Lowry talked about when we spoke to him for the first time to kind of kick off the year last week was the idea that, last year they didn't have any speed bumps. Last year they came out of the gate and they did in the sense that they had some injuries, but it didn't impact the team. The team, like we talked about,
the success on the ice was still there.
It was still there. They were still getting good goaltending from Connor Hellebuck and Warren Brossoit. Yeah. They were still winning hockey games. So you don't really have that sort of clutching of your stick and that nervousness that you may have. So yeah, again, it's incumbent on everybody. That's why you need to grind this from an agent and an organizational perspective. Like, that's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be doing anything else. You shouldn't be like, well, the idea is, we've got leverage. player has no leverage because he's not arbitration. Doesn't have any arbitration rights. So he's got to come to deal. Otherwise, can't do anything. December 1st won't be able to play.
Well,
I don't think
you've heard Don Sweeney talk about Jeremy Swayman this week in Boston, saying December 1st. He threw that out. The general manager, which tells you, I think, how far apart the Bruins and Swayman might be.
Yeah, they're dug in. They are digging in here for. And look, Swayman, I think, really, he's had 2 really good years, right? So he's not. I don't think he's in the $10 million goalie range, but he's going to get paid. He's a great goalie. But yeah, and so there is some similarities there between Swayman and Perfetti. But I mean, you just hope, guys, that this gets done relatively soon, and it doesn't again go into some of those later preseason games leading up to the October 9th season opener, because I think, again, we've seen this before. There's precedence here with Kyle Connor, Patrick Laine, Josh Morrissey, everything like that. But I don't know what it is, but I didn't think this was going to be one of those situations. Maybe because Perfetti's less established as those players were. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Perfetti. Anybody who watches the show, listens to the show, knows that we're all big fans of Perfetti's game. And by the way, I think once he does sign, I think Perfetti's going to have a big year. I do think this is going to be his breakout year, whether that's 60 points, 65 points. I think that's well within his. And look, if you look at his points per game, the first half of the season or the first 30 or 40 games, Dave, I think that's definitely well within his reach. Yeah. So I think he's going to have a big year. So, again, hopefully there's a little bit of anxiety amongst Jets fans. Sarah's walking in right now. So Sarah's going to be able to join us for the last 15 minutes or so here.
There you go. So Sarah Oleski coming up momentarily here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. But you're absolutely right, Ezzy. This is the year for Perfetti where big things were expected of him. You're fine. Don't apologize. You had better things to do and you're more important. Are you still able to join us? It's okay if you can. Yeah, come sit. Come sit. Don't worry about it, Sarah. It's all good. There you go. Sarah Orleski joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show coming up now. Sarah, we appreciate the time because I know how busy of a day it is for you. And, you had...
I am so sorry.
Why are you apologizing? You had better and more important people to...
I did not have more important things to do at all. All of a sudden, I got stopped, and then all of a sudden I looked down and went, oh, no!
It's okay. It's okay. You have nothing to apologize for. We do appreciate you joining us here this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I guess to start, this is such a fun day. We've been here since the wee hours. I'm sure you have as well. Just, the excitement level. Maybe start with that. We'll start with an easy question before we delve deep into this team. But the excitement level just in this room, in this arena, in this rink, at all the rinks, and the Hope Springs Eternal sort of feeling that goes on here at FanFest.
Well, I always love FanFest because it's such a mix. You get so many kids that are so excited to be able to be here. It's set up. There's, bouncy castles all over the place. So if you've got kids, it's a wonderful environment to be at. But also, you look at the fans of all ages, and I think it really sets the tone and kind of kicks off the beginning of a new season for it. And I don't know if you guys find this, but I was saying to Kevin Cheveldayoff earlier that when I walk around now, or if I'm doing grocery shopping and people stop to talk about the team, it's just, there's a lot of excitement going into this season. I think people, even though it's hard to believe in some ways that hockey is starting again and that we're already at this point of September, and because it's been so nice out, but there just seems to be this enthusiasm and this excitement to see what this group can do this year. And I think there's obviously disappointment with how it ended last season during the playoffs, but you think about the great regular season that they had, and I just think that a lot of people are looking forward to seeing what this group can do this season. And like I said, it's a perfect kickoff.
Yeah, it absolutely is. You talk about sort of this season and the excitement level. I think a lot of that comes from almost the new wave of players, some of the younger players who seem as though they're going to get that opportunity. Players that, people, unless they've really been paying close attention to, the juniors or various sort of the other leagues these guys have been playing in, are now going to see these young prospects they've heard so much about and see them take that opportunity. What are you looking for from some of those younger players whose names, have been bandied about as, the Brad Lamberts, the Nikita Chibrikovs, the Colby Barlow, Brandon Yeager, even if they don't make the team or if they only make it for a handful of games, what are you looking for from some of those younger players?
I I just looking forward to seeing the development and them taking that next step. I think it's going to be, they're going to be in tough to be able to make the team. And I'm a big believer. I know that everyone goes by what the opening roster night is, and player X made the opening night roster. And if you have that ability, if you have the ability to only play, a few games before being sent down, I always go, okay, talk to me at the end of October as to it, because I just think that to me that's more indicative. But I would look forward to seeing what that next wave's going to be in terms of, again, just taking that next step, getting one step closer to being able to do it. And what I am looking forward to is that I think that it'll be tough for the Lamberts to make it maybe right out of the gate as a regular. I would expect him to be called up throughout the season because injuries are inevitably likely to play a role. But I'm looking forward to seeing guys that have been around but maybe haven't been regulars. So what's Logan Stanley going to do now with his opportunity? To me, even though he isn't new and he's a veteran, he's still he hasn't been a regular. So what can we see from him? My heart absolutely broke for Ville Heinola yesterday. The collective gasp, and I don't think I've ever actually heard it before in a scrum, where when Scott Arniel announced that it wasn't good and that he is sidelined right now with the infection, and you just heard the
the human aspect came through.
And I mean, players suffer injuries all the time, and it's cool, but to hear that gasp from the media of just everyone's heart broke, because this was, here people have been waiting to see what he can do for a number of years now. You think about the opportunity, he had made the team last year. Then he has the fractured ankle, not able to join the team. Doesn't get that opportunity. So then you go, great. Look, here's your opportunity this year, and then for him to be sidelined right now for an indefinite length of time, it's too bad. But look, there's opportunity. I want to see what the growth is, again, not just from young players, but from ones that are looking to become regulars in the lineup.
And you mentioned Scott Arniel's comments yesterday. I was going to ask you about the goaltending situation, but I thought it was really funny when he was asked about the goaltending situation. He's like, I don't really think about it. When you got an ace like Hellebuyck, it's not something I think about a lot. But we've been talking about it. It's been a long time since there's an uncertainty with who's going to be the backup. And I think you'd agree. It's just phenomenal news that Eric Comrie is back in the organization, right? Like, he's just, everybody loves, there's not one person that doesn't like Eric Comrie, including the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So I'm not sure if he has the inside track or if it's Kahkonen, but it's just, I think, a benefit to both the Jets and the Moose to have two really good options, because whoever doesn't make the Jets and the backup role with Hellebuyck, you're going to have a really solid goalie playing with Milic with the Moose.
100%. And we always joke, I'm sure that you guys do too, I always joke about goalies, right? They're kind of like kickers, where you go, where you explain, someone says something about maybe an idiosyncrasy that they have, and you go, oh, of course, he's a goalie. But I have to say that I've only spoken to Capo a couple of times. So friendly, so nice. One of those guys always has a big smile on his face. And then, as you mentioned, with Eric Comrie, if someone doesn't like Eric Comrie, that is that person's problem, not Eric's, because it is impossible to not like Eric Comrie. What he does, not only, what he's like around the room, the most positive person. You think about the ups and downs that he's had throughout his career, but then also his connection to the community here in Winnipeg, to me, embodies what you would hope from a professional athlete, to be able to have those connections. And I think they will both be in different ways. Whoever is with the Moose will be a leader, a mentor, and they can do it in different ways. And when it comes to who's going to back up Connor Hellebuyck, it's a good problem to have, where you don't have to think about it, to be honest, that much, because you know that Connor Hellebuyck's going to play the vast majority of games anyways, and the benefits of having obviously a two-time Vezina winner in net. It's a good problem to have. Jeez.
Sarah, one of the things that I thought was very interesting was that when Kevin Cheveldayoff spoke to us on July 1st, he talked about opportunity for young players. If you're a young player in the organization, here's your opportunity. There's going to be opportunity for you. And now the interesting thing that I found is, like, whether I was talking to guys one-on-one, like I did an interview with Danny Zhilkin, I said, oh, did you hear that? I heard those words. Elias Salamanca, when we were talking to him, I heard those words. It's interesting to me, because I don't think the organization put out an email saying, here's the words from our GM, but I thought it was interesting that all of these players, for a large part, heard the words, got the message from the GM, and we're all getting ready throughout the course of the summer accordingly based on those comments.
Well, to me, I have been describing and especially as we get ready for another season of Runway, a little plug for our behind the scenes show that we put out. But as we've been getting ready, I said that to me, the theme is opportunity really for this season, because you have heard all throughout the off season, you heard Shoveldayoff speak about it, and then same thing, you heard Scott Arniel too. And I think that it's great because sometimes you come into a season, as we've all seen before, not only with the Jets, but with other teams as well, where you go, all right, I mean, you can say that there's some battles out there, but are they really? I mean, wherever you're battling for that 13th forward or the 7th D, and I don't think that there's necessarily the same sort of competition and opportunity per se. And what I like too is that idea of, you're going to need to call up some players this year. It's going to be challenging because we obviously know that we don't have the same sort of waiver exemption options that have necessarily in the past with some of the key players. I think what's interesting is if Scott Arniel takes the perspective of bringing up a player that suits that particular spot versus just pushing player X that was maybe your 13th forward up and everybody up. So if you're a young player and you know that there is that opportunity for it, and that maybe if you are a guy that thrives in a top 6 role and you need to be in that offensive role, that if that opportunity comes up because of injury, that you will be looked at. To me, even though we always talk about, you want to give your best at any training camp and make an impression on the coaches, how is that not an extra incentive? I think just by human nature, if you go, okay, I'm not just making an impression for years to come, there could be a legitimate opportunity for it. That's a great carrot to dangle in front of anybody, really, I think, of any age. I love that idea.
Sarah Orleski, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by our friends at PlayNow. Sarah, from my perspective, Dylan Samberg is almost one of the key linchpins for the success of the Winnipeg Jets this year. You're asking a player who's firmly established himself as an NHL player. He's had great success playing on that third pairing role.
And established himself on Runway as well.
There you go, and established himself on Runway as well.
There's nobody that gives the thumbs up more than Dylan Samberg. I don't know if you can notice, every picture that we have of him, everything, it's a big smile and the big thumbs up for it. I love it.
Yeah. What I was saying, though, he's, the Jets, the organization is now asking more of him in that second pairing role, behind Josh Morrissey, really to fill that position that was carried by Brendan Dillon for so many years. To me, and knowing, Dillon like you do, how do you think he's going to be sort of embracing that challenge to be a already a key member of this team, but even take that next step in his professional development?
Well, I thought that we saw him take a step, obviously, last year, and when he was put in different scenarios and roles, and at times had to move up and down with the pairings. But I think he's going to thrive in it, you guys. I think we continue to see the development from him, and I think it also sends a good message to those within the organization as well, players I'm talking about, that's what you want to see, right? That you have been promoted internally when that opportunity exists, and I think he can shoulder the load, and I think that he's got elements of his game that we still haven't fully seen yet, and you give him more responsibility. Inevitably, at some point, are there going to be some hiccups or growing pains? Probably, because we see it even with your first defensive pairing. It's going to happen. But I think that he is ready to take that next step, and I'm looking forward to seeing him and Pionk together and what they can do. And you look at it's not a big blue line for it, but I think that he's someone that also, you look at Logan Stanley to step up from a physical standpoint and kind of assert his size. I look for Dylan Samberg to be able to add a little bit of that into the mix too.
I agree with you 100% on Dylan Samberg. Like, obviously, Brendan Dillon, everyone would say that they miss him, and it's part of the business and everything like that. But I feel like Samberg, you forget he's not 19 years old anymore, right? Like I think this is a natural step for him. So I agree with you 100%, Sarah. For what that's worth, I think more people hear what you say than what I say. But
but it's always great when someone agrees with me. I don't have enough people do it, so.
Well, I'm with you. Sarah, you should be careful about what you wish for when Ginsburg's agreeing with you. That might be.
Just ask Dave. Like, Samberg has I'm always like, he's my favorite guy on the team. I just love everything about like his personality, the way he plays hockey, anything to do with him. So I think it's a good point that you make about Samberg stepping into the role that Brendan Dillon had last year.
Too many Dillons on this team.
Yeah, it's true. I wanted to ask you about Nick Ehlers, because anybody who's listened to the show, and obviously there's a lot of people that are vocal on social media about Ehlers and, you know, his usage and the minutes and the power play time and everything like that. But, you know, it seems like the way last year ended, there was a lot of negativity, rightly or wrongly, surrounding Ehlers and maybe how he played in the playoffs and his contract situation. You know, the reports that, you know, I'm not going to ask you to comment on the reports that he wasn't interested in signing with the Jets, but it seems like, you know, things have shifted, and it seems like there's a lot more positivity based on Kevin Cheveldayoff's comments, Scott Arniel's comments, and it seems like he has something to prove, regardless of what happens ultimately with his contract status if he signs with the Jets, which I hope he does. I'm a big fan of Nikolaj Ehlers, just, you know, to nerd out for a second, so I hope that the Jets sign him. But I mean, just it does seem like he has a lot to prove, and it just seems like, you know, he's really bound for a career season, because last year I think he was 1 or 2 points off of a career season. But it just seems like, to me, I'm very excited to see what he can do early on, despite the fact that last season didn't end how he wanted it to.
I look forward to seeing what anyone can do when they're at the end of their contract as well, because I think that there's always some extra incentive for everybody to be able to do it, whether you want to re-sign with your existing team or you're looking for a fresh start elsewhere. There's always something to prove with it. Look, I am with you. I make no bones about the fact that regardless of how he plays on the ice, I am a massive Nikolaj Ehlers fan. In fact, he just walked off the stage after doing an interview, and I said to him, "You are a great human." And he smiles and he said, "Oh, thank you." And because let me tell you, he was out there signing autographs, and that is not something that you see from every player for it, you know, and they have meetings to get to and they've got to get on the ice and everything, so there's different dynamics that go into it. But that guy is so great with fans. Every time you see him, and when you talk to him, he's smiling, he's engaged, he loves, I enjoy.
Plus he's got a really great dog.
100%.
Yeah.
He had to run out yesterday. Are you going home? Gotta go get the dog. Gotta go for a walk right now. Everything revolves around the dog for it, which is fantastic. But I think he does have something to prove. I think that he is that type of player with his style of game that will end up throughout his season, that the pendulum will switch as to whether or not people are on board or not, and that's unfortunately just the way that it goes, the ebbs and flows of it. But I can't say enough good things about him. I'm at the point, and I appreciate, because everybody always makes the comment about it matters what happens on the ice, and yes, it absolutely does. But I'm at the point in my life where, from a reporter standpoint, broadcast standpoint, I really enjoy being around good people, and it makes a difference. And he is a great guy. That room there is such a great group to deal with. I think that he fits in well, and he's one of those ones that, being that talent that we've seen develop over the years, you hope that you got many more years of Nikolaj Ehlers, or at least I do. But I hope that he's around for more years to come.
Well, I could see it, Sarah, yesterday when we were waiting for his group to go on the ice, and he stopped to interact with a young fan, and you could just see what that does for these kids and what an impact it has. And it's one of those things that I said, the disconnect in the community from the team because of COVID and stuff like that. Now you see it back, and these kids get a chance to see the players. It's so significant. The question I had for you, I asked Paulie as well, as what would be the one or two players maybe that you have your eye on, that you're interested in watching, and whether it's a Lambert, whoever, I don't want to fill in the blanks for you, but that you've watched over the last few days and you're looking forward to watching for the rest of the training camp?
First, I just want to follow up on your comment about watching him interact with fans and that impression. We always say, and I don't know if you guys remember interacting with athletes when you were young or anything, maybe Jets 1.0 if there's any memory. I remember Teemu Selanne, and there you go, and Ty Domi playing tennis. I was waiting because I had a group of friends, so I was a teenager at the time, waiting to play after them, and they came out and talked to us and just, looked at the tennis racket. Oh, how's it? Oh, look, this is a nice tennis racket. Guys, I still have the tennis racket. I don't keep anything. I still keep that tennis racket, though, which is not in good shape. It's really quite gross.
Wilson, Spalding. I was a tennis player, so now I need to know what brand you used.
It was Now, which model, I don't know,
Yeah.
but it was a head tennis racket. And I actually opened it up the other day, and the tape on the had disintegrated. It was so gross. I thought this really needs to go away, but I haven't been able. And I use that just as an example, as the impact that a short period of time with a fan, you will remember, that fan will remember it for years and years to come. So now that I've gone on my little rant about why I think it's so important, for players that I'm watching, I fully admit that I don't probably pay as much attention to the prospects. I know that, I read all of your work going because I try to keep it informed with it, but I don't watch to the same extent. I usually pay attention more to the ones that I think are going to make the squad this year. I am interested to see what Brad Lambert looks like in game, also because of the whole Cole Perfetti situation and whether or not that could open up any sort of scenarios for him early on. But I would really like to see, as later in the preseason, I would like to see what the Logan Stanley's like, and what happens in on that fourth line. Fourth line might not be a sexy choice for it, but I always had a soft spot for the offensive line when I covered football too. So I like those players that
unsung heroes.
That is exactly what I like. So I like to see what the mix is going to be, and then I kind of follow along with the rest as to the prospects and who's going to make an impact with it.
What's left on your agenda for today? I know you're probably going back to, you got some more interviews you got to conduct here at FanFest.
I do, and then in short order, I think I'm going to be honest, I'm going to try to squeeze in a university volleyball game to watch, because I'm a little bit of
We were talking about university volleyball the other day.
We're a little bit of a volleyball household,
Yeah.
so I might try to squeeze in a quick one before heading down to the rink, of course, with the preseason game tonight. And I cannot get over the fact that we're into preseason hockey already. It's just the blink of an eye, and now all of a sudden it starts again, and probably because of the weather, that I've had a difficult time thinking that it's going to be quite a while before I'm outside again.
I think I'm going to get the title right. Senior host and producer.
I tried to add as many things in there and make it as complicated as possible, only to get under the skin of Jamie Thomas is really what it is.
Just talk to Jamie about his fantasy football performance. That'll take care of that really easily.
He was really, plus his love for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So we, Tua was a hot topic back there earlier today.
It's easy to find the little things to poke Jamie
and
about.
And once you do, you just can't stop. It's just too easy.
Agreed wholeheartedly. Sarah Orlesky, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a lot of fun here at FanFest, and of course, it's always great to catch up with you.
Well, I know it's always so great to have you guys out here. What people can't see behind the camera is how many people were around here watching you guys as well, and always love your coverage, and looking forward to more this season. Hopefully I'll get to be on with you guys again.
Sarah, they were all here for you. It wasn't us.
They were not.
It was not for us.
But
that's going to do it for us here at FanFest. I know that the Winnipeg Sports Talk guys are over here on our right, and they've been very patient as we've gone overtime. They want our internet.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, they can wait. We don't care about them. They can wait. Your priority.
Because I've never won
asking for everyone's internet.
I've never won the marble race, and so I thought I'm just going to keep talking and forget that.
You can tell Remus is anxious. He needs our Ethernet connection.
Doesn't help that Drew forgot to hit us to go live, so we're actually just hitting the 2-hour mark because we missed the first 5 minutes of the show.
Every time
it was such a good 5 minutes too.
Every time we think we're professional, we do something to remind us.
We were breaking down the bouncy castle, the Jets dogs. Like, it was great radio. Like,
yes.
I guess we're not on radio anymore, but
whatever this
great
is,
streaming,
digital media. It's been a great Saturday morning here at FanFest. As I mentioned, the Winnipeg Sports Talk guys are up next. Thanks everyone for joining us. A big thank you to our sponsors. A big thank you to Sarah Orlesky, Paul Edmonds, producer Tim, our friends at PlayNow for being the official title sponsor of this show, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place, Tough Duck, and Seagram's. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. For everybody, for Dave, for Ezzy, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on all of our YouTube and social media platforms, and today live from Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest. Stay tuned for a special edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk that's coming up next. Head over to their YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Good night.
Remus.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.